Well, I'm with Richard and Brian from the group, of course, who are looking after the protection, in your view, of the greenways. We come back to where we did the interview with the Four-Wheel Drive Club just a few weeks ago. You watched that interview and you've got a response. I've got more questions to ask you, but certain things definitely have irked you about it, I understand.
Well, there were assumptions made that green lanes are heritage are against all vehicles on the hills, on the uplands, and that is not true. What we want to see is a sustainable use of the old green lanes that are up here, which is completely contrary to the view that was given by the secretary of the Max Four-Wheel Drive Club, that we're against all vehicles in the uplands.
But where do you want to go? I still find this difficult because you seem to say that when we go around here looking at this, you don't want any more damage done. Therefore, by the very nature, you can't have any vehicles up here.
No, that's not true. We've actually submitted a report called the Northern Greenways Report, which was submitted to the Department of Infrastructure some months ago, and that report has been considered by the department, and they have now come forward with a summary recommendation. We look forward to that recommendation being put forward because in our report we made a recommendation for a number of what we deem to be hard tracks through the uplands that motorcyclists could use in the future. We don't want anybody not to be able to enjoy their activity, but what we want to have is an environment protected. The uplands to the Isle of Man are unique. They're an area of outstanding natural beauty and have immense value in various other ways. And this particular track here, the D10, which was presented by the 4x4 Club as not being the legal route from the mountain box, and they want to open what they class as the legal highway, we feel that is not a step in the right direction.
Why?
Because the track that's been used in the last 40, 50 years runs from the mountain box along the wall and then goes down to the boardwalk and joins what they call today the Millennium Way. The D10, as defined by the 4x4 Club, runs below this track and runs out to join the mountain road about a half a mile south of the mountain box. Now, it would be futile, not just futile, but silly to actually do that. There is a current track that's being used. Why not, if the decision is to continue to allow this track to be used, why not keep the track that's being used and clearly define it and make it fit for purpose?
But we've seen pictures of that track and it's in a terrible condition, isn't it? I mean, they're trying to admittedly bring everyone all together with their markings, but are you not thinking that's also not good for your point of view to have such scarring?
Well, we don't want to prevent people from enjoying their sport. In our report, the Northern Greenways survey, which we submitted to the Department of Infrastructure, we made recommendations that certain tracks are closed, particularly what we call cul-de-sac tracks, i.e. the Laxey Valley, Glen Alden, Glen Dew. Those tracks lead nowhere. Motorcyclists go up and then they play in the wider environment at the top of the end of the road, or they look for a route to go out and join another track on the open moorland. And we feel that those cul-de-sac tracks don't really serve any benefit for the motorcyclists other than it encourages damage to the wider environment in that location.
You guys now all get together, you have meetings. Isn't this the sort of thing you can discuss and come to a compromise about?
Yes, we have discussed it, and through the Green Lane Management Group, GLUG as it's known within the Department of Infrastructure, unfortunately there is a restructure of government going on at the moment, and we know from the meeting we had some months ago with the Minister Skelly, and the new Chief Executive, Mr Black, that they have got a summary of recommendations that they want to implement. Some months have now passed since that summary report was presented, and we are still waiting to actually meet with the department to begin to process the implementation of these recommendations.
Well, we're waiting for them to put the flesh on the new strategy they've come up with, and we haven't seen any signs of this so far. And we thought that the progress would be happening now. But we've not seen any signs of this.
What do you say to these people still that we keep hearing that you are quite adamant you just don't want anything going up here? I mean, and it's been said numerous times, hasn't it? You just don't want anything. You won't agree to anything.
We're not against all activity by motorbikes. we believe that 98% of the damage has been caused by off-road motorbikes. There is a small amount of 4x4 activity, but it doesn't do anything like the amount of damage done by motorbikes, and also the sheer numbers of motorbikes that now use these tracks. What we want to see is a sustainable management of these lanes so they are not damaged any more than they have been. Now, some of them are soft grass tracks across the peat. They are not capable of withstanding, they might be capable of withstanding 100 or 200 bikes in a year, but not the thousands that now use them. And we have submitted to the government a map of hard trails which we think are suitable, and we are waiting to hear back from them on the practicalities of that. They haven't given us any indication of this, and they've just only picked 2 tracks that they want to see one-way traffic on to try and limit damage, and they want to close 2 others that will probably become bridleways for horses.
Are you not impressed at all with the 4x4 Club and what they're doing, this putting some repair work in place?
We think that the amount of work that the Manx 4x4 Club are doing does in no way keep up with the amount of damage and harm that's being caused. They make great store that they are doing this work, but to our eyes, it is not enough the amount of work they're doing is not enough to keep up with the amount of damage that's happening, and the situation is getting worse year on year.
I think the biggest thing that could happen with the volunteers that have come forward to try and do something to improve the situation would be to implement the countryside volunteer wardens, who the likes of the 4x4 people and the walking clubs and other organisations and users of the wider environment of the uplands of the island, if they're given the power to be a countryside warden, when they see irresponsible behaviour, they're not afraid to present themselves to the people that are behaving irresponsibly. You see it all over the island in various places. Glen Rushen is a favourite spot for irresponsible behaviour by off-road motorcyclists, and I see the department taking all kinds of steps to try and restrict the activity of these motorcyclists into the wider environment.
Finally, your group, I mean, you're very vocal. We've had this conversation before. But how many are there of you up against all these hundreds of people who are using these roads?
There's about between 6 to 8 people who regularly come to our meetings.
6 to 8. I mean,
that's
not a lot, is it?
But we are supported. We've been sent messages of support by hundreds of other people across the island who we invite to meetings, but they rarely come. Now, from our website, we've had hundreds of comments given to us by people who support what we're doing. There's also been a good many letters in the papers from people we don't know who support what we are saying. There is a sort of a tendency for people over here not to speak out and to keep quiet. But we have hundreds of people out there who've supported. I can walk down the street in Douglas or in Ramsey and be recognised, and people come up to me and say, I totally agree with what you're doing.
It's certainly got lots of views. I mean, that's why we're still on the subject. I mean, people are interested, there's no doubt about it. I'm just trying to get the credentials you have. I mean, is it just 6 against the world almost?
No. We have come together as a group of people who have become very concerned at the extensive damage to the upland tracks, and anybody that's got any feeling for the Isle of Man and its beautiful countryside cannot help but see and feel the impact of off-road activity, particularly motorbikes, in the last 30 years.
And there's video online, of course, although some of it's been removed since we originally showed it.
Some of the worst videos been removed because it shows something which they might be ashamed of.
Well, this debate's going to go on, and we obviously, again, always offer anybody else who wants to make an opinion to get in touch with me at MTTV. And do you see an end in sight to this? Do you see a resolution?
It's going to take some time. Obviously, government is in a big transitional period. There isn't the money around that they had, and I can see that my own view is that the way ahead is going to be through a certain amount of volunteer work with people taking on responsibility of countryside wardens. The thing is, the Isle of Man has got a lot to offer other than motorcycles. I was involved in the Walking Festival this year, and the numbers of people that came to the Isle of Man who enjoyed the countryside of the Isle of Man had a fabulous time, and they think the countryside is fantastic, but nevertheless they were noticing the damage when we crossed it of the motorcycles and the scarring in the uplands, and they all wanted to know what's going on, you know.
Well, I mean, it's quite this thing in the UK where they have closed off a lot of
They
the
are.
areas, haven't they? So
They are closing more and more of them off. Yes,
just forcing people maybe to come here.
which is putting people's attention on this island. Now, one thing I want to say is that through contacts with people in places like the Peak District National Park, there are at least 200,000 registered off-road bikes on the island. We think about 4,000 to 5,000 come over here every year, but this number could increase as more closures happen in the UK. The island will attract more and more of these visitors to this island. We're just about struggling to cope with the numbers that come over. If that doubles or trebles, if say 10% decided to come over 1 year, the damage that would happen to our upland tracks would be immeasurable. And so the government needs to take a very close look at the implications of the increasing numbers of bikers that are coming to the island and what could happen.
Okay, just finally, you don't want to see any of these off-roaders using the grass and the sod sort of areas, only hard standing. Is that where you're really going?
We want to see a suitable hard service for green lane and motorcycle activity, and also for the 4x4s to use as well, and that's the thing. I mean, we see the 4x4s occasionally using the uplands, and we see them not bringing clubs, but they get approached by clubs from the UK who have been to the island and enjoyed the island. But we don't want to discourage that. We want to see it done in a responsible manner.